It's time to look at the arguably story of the day. That is all things Tesla. I said markets have been quiet, but Tesla has not been. So here to tell us more on their earnings, I'd like to welcome in Kevin Green, senior markets correspondent for the network. So Kevin, I saw you were also tweeting alongside myself as the earnings call was going on in real time. So I'm so curious your takeaways, if you were pro the earnings call, against the earnings call, and really what you thought of their first quarter financials, because objectively they weren't strong, but the market's like, who cares? Tesla's solving autonomy, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, the earnings call was actually very interesting. I mean, they were talking about a lot of visionary statements or some projects that they have in the future, especially when you're talking about the robo-taxi and their plan for implementation and the benefits that the company could see over the long term. And that's really what kind of sparked this rally to the upside. And one thing that kind of confused me a little bit, Jenny, is the fact that anytime that they had any questions around the near-term impacts of their company or the current landscape, they kind of deflected a little bit. They really didn't want to address that so much as trying to address some of the futuristic projects that they have, the humanoid robot, the robo-taxi, providing a lower cost vehicle out there on the road, and then also trying to pump up the FSD adoption rates there. So when you're looking at the numbers, revenue came in at $21.3 billion. That was below the street's expectations of $22.15 billion. And then the adjusted earnings per share came in at 45 cents. Once again, lower than the street's expectations. You're looking at net income dropping by 55% on a year-over-year basis, and they were actually negative free cash flow for the quarter as well, which is not a really good sign to say the least. But those forward-looking statements are really what captured the attention of a lot of investors. I also believe that some of this move is also the short covering that's taking place right now. But the big question mark that is out there and why we are seeing kind of a little bit of a divergence when it comes to analyst expectations is the fact that, once again, they did not really address the near-term issues with the company. They talked about the long-term vision, but how are you going to kind of bridge that gap? And how are you going to be able to kind of turn around the current situation in order to get to the brighter days ahead with all of that new technology? So it was mixed, but you can't say too much negative things when it comes to that earnings call. I think it was the best performance that Elon's had over the last couple of quarters when it comes to an earnings call. It looked like he was kind of a little bit more enthusiastic about the future of Tesla, and basically said to current investors, don't worry about things right now. And if you haven't tried FSD, you need to do so in order to really truly understand what we're trying to gain here in the long term. So very interesting call, very bad report when it comes to the financials, but the market just doesn't care.
Kevin, I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with, I'm not saying that this changes the downtrend in the stock or that the stock's going to go higher from here. But to me, this doesn't take a lot of overcomplicating. You had a stock that had 2-year highs in short interest, put open interest expanding to year-to-date highs. Seems like every analyst has jumped off this ship. It's one of the only underperforming mega cap names in terms of stock price performance. This was just a crowded, bearish trade that was a ton of selling the rumor, and then when the news finally hit, it's like it's hard to be worse than all the expectations that were out there. You throw in, to your point, an optimistic Elon Musk with some big things potentially on the horizon. Who knows if they'll pull them off or not? But it just was ripe for this kind of reaction to the upside. Again, I don't know that it has staying power if it can't turn around here in the next weeks, months. But this just seemed like a situation that was ripe to happen, much like Netflix in the exact opposite fashion.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we actually talked about Tesla a couple of weeks ago and the fact that we had all this negative news, and all you need is really one bright spot or one good nugget to come out of this earnings announcement, and it can turn the stock around. And we are seeing that. As you're talking about, the short interest was fairly high, a lot of bearish sentiment hitting the street. Analysts are typically late to the party, both on the upside and the downside too. So a lot of these re-ratings, the market for the most part seem to have already priced that in. And so, yeah, you're seeing a little bit of a short covering event. And you're right. I mean, how long is this going to last? Is it going to be able to last? I think that's going to be the biggest question. The big bright spot that no one is actually talking about is the fact that the company actually did beat the street's expectations for automotive gross margins. And that was actually the biggest fear, I believe. I think the market was kind of bracing for a 15% automotive gross margin number to come out. And I believe that the automotive gross margin was sitting at around 18.5%. So better than the street's expectations, to say the least. I think that's the only bright spot that you have. They continue to talk about cost-cutting measures. the cost of goods sold and the scalability of that once they start putting all these other cars and new models into production, utilizing the same infrastructure. So the bright spots were there. As far as the strategy, for the most part, I think just the next couple of quarters, I think, are still a question mark, and they just didn't have any answers for the next couple of quarters. But the long-term vision seems to be intact, and I think a lot of investors that believe in this vision are kind of really trying to double down on this name right now, and probably are happy that it was trading at these lows if this trend to the upside continues.
Yeah, Kevin, and I think that that's actually exactly what we heard from Elon Musk. He was like, you need to get into one of our vehicles, try out FSD. If you don't understand that, don't buy Tesla stock, which I was like, wow, that is an aggressive approach. But hey, I respect it. And I hate the way that, unfortunately, there's been so much scrutiny on him and his character as a person, whereas all he wanted to talk about was the future of Tesla and like what they can do for this solution of autonomy. So I thought, yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was the best earnings call we've had in years, at least to my memory. So I think encouraging to actually see the stock price reflect that today, because that's always the next hurdle. But we will leave it there. Great insight on all things Teslas. I'm sure you've talked about this name a few times earlier today, Kevin Green, senior markets correspondent for the network.